The luxury shopping mall gleamed under bright lights, crowds of people browsing expensive stores. A single father in a worn shirt walked down the hallway, holding his little daughter's hand. They stopped at a toy display. The little girl smiled, holding up a doll box. "Daddy, can I?" The father counted loose change in his wallet, forced a smile, and shook his head. People behind them snickered. Someone like that shopping here. In the crowd, a billionaire CEO in an expensive red dress laughed mockingly. But just minutes later, she was desperately chasing after the poor father, her voice trembling. "Please don't joke with me." Meet David Miller, 38 years old, a single dad with brown hair, tall but thin, wearing simple clothes. He works as a handyman, fixing electrical and plumbing issues, earning barely enough to cover rent and food. His daughter Sophie is 7 years old. She loves drawing rainbows on napkins and making paper dolls from scraps. Her bright eyes always full of curiosity and wonder, their heartbreaking story. David's wife Sarah died in a car accident 3 years ago, leaving him to raise Sophie completely alone. Since then, he's been juggling multiple odd jobs, plumbing repairs in the morning, electrical work in the afternoon, sometimes cleaning offices at night. Society constantly looks down on him. He's nothing special, just another blue-collar worker struggling to get by. The neighbors whisper, "That poor man can barely afford groceries. What's he doing with a child?" But David doesn't care about their judgment. His only concern is giving Sophie the love and stability she deserves. Today is Saturday afternoon. David promised to take Sophie somewhere special to make up for all those busy weekdays when he's working late and she's with the elderly babysitter. They arrive at Crossland Mall, the most luxurious shopping center in the city. Marble floors gleaming, crystal chandeliers sparkling, designer stores lining every corridor. Father and daughter sit on a wooden bench near the food court, sharing a simple meal of hot dogs and bottled water they brought from home in a brown paper bag. Well-dressed shoppers walk by, their designer bags swinging. They glance at David's worn work boots and Sophie's patched dress, smirking with obvious disdain. "Look at them," a woman in pearls whispers to her friend. "No money, but they still come to places like this." Her friend nods, probably hoping someone will take pity on them. Then she makes her entrance. Isabella Cross, 33 years old, tech industry billionaire known throughout the city for her sharp business mind and even sharper tongue. She glides through the mall in a striking red designer dress, expensive jewelry catching the light, flanked by bodyguards in black suits and personal assistants carrying her shopping bags. Other customers step aside respectfully, recognizing her from magazine covers and business news shows. Sophie finishes her hot dog and runs excitedly to the toy store window, pressing her small hands against the glass, eyes wide with wonder at the colorful displays inside. She spots a beautiful doll with blonde curls and a pink dress, exactly like the princess in her favorite bedtime story. "Daddy," she calls out, "can we look inside?" David's heart sinks. He knows they can't afford anything in that expensive store, but he can't bear to disappoint his daughter. They walk inside together. Sophie carefully picks up the doll box, cradling it like precious treasure, her face glowing with pure joy. "Daddy, can I please have her? She looks just like Princess Emma from your stories." David checks his wallet, counting and recounting the crumpled bills, $23 and some loose change. The doll costs $39.99. He kneels down to Sophie's level. "Sweetie, maybe we can come back another time." The crowd of shoppers nearby begins to gather, watching this painful scene unfold, some recording with their phones. "How embarrassing," someone mutters. "Why bring a child here if you can't afford anything?" another voice adds. Isabella approaches, drawn by the commotion, her red heels clicking on the marble floor, arms crossed with amusement. She looks David up and down, taking in his faded jeans and work-worn hands, then laughs out loud. "If you're some secret billionaire hiding your wealth," she announces loudly enough for everyone to hear, "I'll chase after you right now. But please, Don't joke with people like that. The crowd erupts in laughter. Phones continue recording. Sophie's face turns bright red with shame. She tugs on her father's shirt. Daddy, are we really that poor? Is that why everyone's laughing? David's heart breaks, but he keeps his voice gentle. Sophie, we have something more valuable than money. We have each other's love. The real sign of who David truly is? Sophie, trying to comfort her father, quickly grabs a napkin from her pocket and draws a small house with two stick figures holding hands, writing in crayon. Daddy is my home. Isabella notices this tender moment but dismisses it, turning away with a superior smile, convinced she's just witnessed another case of someone living beyond their means. But what she doesn't know, what none of them know, is about to change everything. David gently takes Sophie's hand. Come on, sweetheart. Let's go get you a small treat instead. They walk to the mall's bakery section. David hopes to buy Sophie a cookie or cupcake to cheer her up after the embarrassment at the toy store. The teenage cashier scans a chocolate chip cookie. That'll be $4, sir. David pulls out his debit card, the same worn plastic he uses for everything. Slides it through the card reader. The machine beeps. Declined. Let me try again, David says quietly, his cheeks reddening. Beep. Declined again. The customers in line behind them start getting impatient, checking their watches, sighing dramatically. Great, someone mutters. Now we're all stuck waiting. Isabella, still nearby with her entourage, shakes her head in disgust. I told you, people like that shouldn't shop in places like this. David apologizes to the cashier. I'm sorry. Let me try a different card. He reaches deeper into his worn leather wallet, past family photos and Sophie's drawings, and pulls out something unexpected. An old faded card with silver edges. The plastic yellowed with age, barely readable text that says, Crossland founding shareholder, lifetime access. The teenage cashier has never seen anything like it. She calls her manager over. The manager, a woman in her 50s, takes one look and her face goes completely white. Sir, excuse me, she stammers. This is a founding shareholder card from when the mall first opened. The crowd falls silent. Isabella steps closer to get a better look. The manager continues. There are only 3 of these cards in existence. They were issued to the original investors who built this entire shopping center. What nobody in that crowd knows is the truth about David Miller. His father, Robert Miller, was one of 3 men who invested their life savings to build Crossland Mall back in 1995. Starting with nothing but a dream and determination. Robert worked 18-hour days, sleeping in construction trailers, eating packed lunches, slowly building his small investment into a fortune. When the mall became successful, Robert could have lived in luxury, but he chose to stay humble, teaching his son David that money should serve people, not the other way around. 3 years ago, when Robert died suddenly of a heart attack, he left everything to David, with one condition written in his will: use this wealth to help others. Never let it change who you are. David honored his father's wishes. He kept working as a handyman, raising Sophie with the same values his father taught him: kindness, humility, and hard work. The founding shareholder card gives him access to everything in the mall, but he's never used it, preferring to live on his handyman wages and save the inheritance for Sophie's future. The manager looks at the card again. Looks at the card, then at David, then back at the card. Mr. Miller, David Miller, she asks in disbelief. David nods quietly. Your father was Robert Miller, one of the founders. Another nod. The entire crowd gasps. Isabella's mouth drops open. Phones start recording frantically. The manager's voice shakes. Sir, you own 33% of this entire mall. Sophie looks up at her father with confusion. Daddy, what does that mean? David kneels down. It means Grandpa Robert helped build this place, and now we help take care of it. The crowd starts whispering frantically. He's been hiding his wealth this whole time. Why would a rich man dress like that? Is this some kind of social experiment? Isabella stands frozen, realizing she just publicly humiliated one of the wealthiest men in the city. But David doesn't care about the attention. He simply signs the receipt for Sophie's cookie, picks up his daughter, and starts walking toward the exit. "Wait!" Isabella calls out desperately, her designer heels clicking as she hurries after them. David pauses but doesn't turn around. "Please," Isabella continues, her voice cracking slightly. "Don't joke with me. Are you really—" David finally turns, Sophie in his arms, his expression calm and dignified. "Ma'am," he says quietly, "I've never joked about who I am. I'm a father who loves his daughter. That's the only identity that matters to me." The crowd watches in stunned silence as David Miller, secret millionaire, walks away with the same humble dignity he's always carried. Sophie whispers in his ear, "Daddy, why is everyone staring at us now?" David kisses her forehead. "Because sometimes people forget that the most important things in life, love, kindness, family, those can't be bought in any store." As they reach the mall exit, Sophie pulls out her crayon and draws another picture on a napkin. This time it's a crown, but she puts it on the stick figure that represents her father. "You're the king of being my daddy," she says, tucking the drawing into his shirt pocket. And that's when David Miller realizes he may have inherited his father's wealth, but Sophie inherited something far more valuable, a heart full of love and the wisdom to see what truly matters. The news travels faster than wildfire in the age of smartphones. Within minutes, videos of the scene spread across social media. Shocking. Poor man revealed as mall owner. Isabella's assistant frantically Googles on her phone, "Ma'am, David Miller. His net worth is estimated at over $200 million. Isabella's face goes pale. She realizes she just committed social suicide in front of hundreds of witnesses, all caught on camera. "Find him," she orders her bodyguards. "I need to fix this immediately." Meanwhile, David and Sophie walk calmly through the parking garage, completely unaware of the chaos erupting behind them. "Daddy," Sophie asks, swinging his hand, "can we come back next week? I want to see if they have new crayons at the art store." "Of course, sweetheart," David replies. "We can come whenever you want." What he doesn't tell her is that he could buy the entire art store, every crayon, every paintbrush, every coloring book, but he'd rather teach her the value of earning things through patience and appreciation. Behind them, Isabella bursts through the mall exit, practically running in her designer heels, her perfectly styled hair becoming disheveled, her composed CEO facade completely cracking. "Wait," she shouts across the parking garage. "Mr. Miller, please." David stops beside his old pickup truck, the same vehicle he's driven for 8 years. Reliable, but nothing fancy. A working man's truck with tools in the back. Isabella approaches, breathing heavily, her entourage of bodyguards and assistants trailing behind her, all looking equally shocked at their boss's unprecedented behavior. "Please," Isabella pants, "don't joke with me. I need to apologize." David opens his truck door and helps Sophie into her car seat, taking his time, showing the same patient care he always does. "There's nothing to apologize for," he says simply. "You spoke your truth. I respect honesty." But Isabella isn't satisfied. "No, you don't understand. I run Cross Industries. We could partner with your mall, create incredible opportunities." David pauses. "My mall?" "Yes," Isabella exclaims. "Crossland. You own a third of it. We could—" "Ma'am," David interrupts gently, "I think you're confused about something important." He closes Sophie's door and turns to face Isabella fully, his expression kind but firm. "I don't own this mall to make business deals. My father built it to bring families together, to create a place where communities could thrive." Isabella blinks rapidly. "But the profits, the opportunities, David continues, are not for making more money. They're for making life better for people like that security guard whose grandson needs college money." Or the single mother working 3 jobs who deserves affordable childcare while she shops? The crowd that followed them outside stands in stunned silence. Phone still recording, capturing every word. Sophie rolls down her window. "Daddy, is the pretty lady okay?" She looks sad. Isabella's eyes fill with tears, not from sadness, but from the sudden realization of how empty her life has become, chasing profit margins while missing the human connections right in front of her. She stammers, "I've never thought about business that way." David nods. "My father used to say, success isn't measured by what you accumulate, it's measured by what you contribute." A young man in the crowd steps forward. "Excuse me, Mr. Miller, I work at the GameStop in your mall. Is it true you sometimes fix our broken displays after hours?" David looks slightly embarrassed. "Well, I notice things that need repair." Another voice calls out, "You fixed my daughter's wheelchair ramp last month." The maintenance crew said some anonymous person reinforced it. More people begin sharing stories. "Someone paid for my grandmother's prescription at the mall pharmacy." "The children's play area got new safety padding overnight." "Free Wi-Fi appeared in all the family rest areas." Isabella listens to these testimonies with growing amazement, realizing that David has been quietly using his wealth to improve countless lives, never seeking credit or recognition. "How long?" she asked quietly. "Have you been doing this?" "Since my father died," David answers. "It's what he would have wanted. It's what Sophie deserves to inherit. A world where people help each other." Sophie calls out from the truck, "Daddy, tell them about the paper dolls." David smiles. "Sophie makes paper dolls from our receipts. She gives them to children who look sad. It doesn't cost anything, but it makes people smile." Isabella wipes her eyes. "Your daughter? She's teaching me more about business than my Harvard MBA ever did." The crowd begins to disperse. People calling friends, sharing this incredible story, but not with mockery anymore, with genuine respect and admiration. As David starts his truck, Isabella makes one final plea. "Please, let me learn from you. I want to understand what real success looks like." David rolls down his window. "Real success, Ms. Cross, is going home tonight knowing you made someone's day a little brighter. Can your company reports tell you that?" As they drive away, Sophie waves goodbye to Isabella through the back window. And in that moment, Isabella Cross, Billionaire CEO, realizes she's just met the richest man she's ever known, and his wealth has nothing to do with money. The next morning, Isabella wakes up in her penthouse apartment, but everything feels different. The marble floors that once impressed her now seem cold. The expensive art on her walls feels meaningless. Her reflection in the gold-framed mirror shows a successful woman who suddenly questions what success really means. Her phone buzzes constantly. News outlets wanting interviews about her encounter with the secret millionaire. Business partners calling with partnership proposals. Social media notifications showing the viral videos from yesterday. But Isabella ignores it all. Instead, she finds herself thinking about David's words. Success isn't measured by what you accumulate. It's measured by what you contribute. She calls her assistant. "Cancel my meetings today. I need to visit someone." "The Miller interview?" her assistant asks excitedly. "No," Isabella says quietly. "I need to visit the Crossland Mall, alone." An hour later, Isabella walks through the mall without her usual entourage. No bodyguards, no assistants, just herself in simple jeans and a plain white shirt. She observes things she never noticed before. Elderly people sitting on benches, not shopping, but simply enjoying air conditioning. Mothers with strollers using the family rest areas David quietly funded. Teenagers doing homework at tables with free Wi-Fi. At the toy store where yesterday's drama unfolded, Isabella watches a grandmother counting coins to buy her grandson a small car. The same painful scene David experienced with Sophie. Without thinking, Isabella approaches the cashier. "I'd like to pay for their purchase, anonymously." The cashier looks confused. "Ma'am?" "Don't tell them who paid," Isabella insists. "Just Let them have it as a gift. She watches the grandmother's face light up, the little boy's joy. And for the first time in years, Isabella feels something her money never bought her: genuine happiness from giving. Throughout the day, she continues this pattern, paying for school supplies for a struggling student, covering lunch costs for a family stretching their budget, leaving tips for hardworking service employees. By evening, Isabella has spent more money on strangers than she usually spends on herself, but she's never felt richer. She sits on the same bench where David and Sophie shared their simple meal, pulling out her phone to call her company's board of directors. "I'm proposing a new initiative," she announces during the conference call. "Cross Industries Community Investment Program. We're going to start measuring success differently." Her board members sound confused. "What kind of metrics are we talking about, Isabella?" "Families helped, children educated, communities strengthened. Profits will follow, but they won't lead." After the call, Isabella notices someone approaching. It's the security guard she saw David talking to yesterday. "Excuse me, miss," the elderly man says. "Aren't you the lady from yesterday? The one who, well..." Isabella nods, embarrassed. "Yes, I said some terrible things." The guard smiles. "Mr. David talked about you, said you seemed like someone with a good heart who just needed to remember how to use it." "He said that?" Isabella asks, surprised. "After how I treated him?" "That's Mr. David," the guard chuckles. "He sees the best in everyone, even when they can't see it themselves." The guard continues. "My grandson got into college because of Mr. David's scholarship program. Never asked for credit, just wanted to help." Isabella wipes away tears. "How many people has he helped?" "Hundreds," the guard replies. "Maybe thousands. He's been quietly taking care of this community for 3 years. Fixing things, paying bills, funding programs, never wanting recognition." That night, Isabella sits in her apartment, but instead of reviewing profit reports, she's researching community programs, education initiatives, ways her company can actually help people instead of just generating revenue. She thinks about Sophie's paper dolls, simple gifts that cost nothing but meant everything to the children who received them. Isabella opens her laptop and begins typing, not a business proposal, but a personal letter. "Dear Mr. Miller, you probably don't want to hear from me after yesterday, but I need to tell you that you've changed my life. You've shown me what real wealth looks like, and I want to learn how to use my resources the way you use yours, not for profit, but for people." She pauses, deletes everything, and starts over with just 3 words. "Thank you, David." Tomorrow she decides she'll visit the mall again, not as Isabella Cross, billionaire CEO, but as someone learning to see the world through Sophie's eyes, where kindness matters more than money, and paper dolls are treasures worth more than gold. 2 weeks later, Isabella returns to Crossland Mall. But this time, she's not alone. She's brought her entire executive team, not for a business meeting, but for a lesson in humanity. "I want you all to spend the day here," she tells them, "not shopping, watching, learning, seeing what this community really needs." Her CFO looks confused. "Isabella, what exactly are we looking for?" "The answer to a question I never thought to ask," she replies. "How can we use our success to create more success for others?" Meanwhile, David continues his weekend tradition with Sophie, walking through the mall, sharing simple moments, completely unaware of the transformation he's inspired. They stop at the art store where Sophie finally has enough saved allowance to buy a new box of crayons. 12 colors instead of the 8-pack she usually gets. "Daddy, look," she exclaims. "Now I can draw even more rainbows." David smiles. "What will you draw first?" "A picture of you fixing Mrs. Chen's sink," Sophie says proudly, "because you're a superhero who helps people." At that moment, Isabella approaches, nervous but determined, carrying a small wrapped gift. "Excuse me," she says softly. "Sophie, I have something for you." Sophie looks at her father, who nods permission. Isabella kneels down to Sophie's level. "I wanted to apologize. I said some unkind things about your daddy, and I was wrong. Sophie tilts her head. It's okay. Daddy says people make mistakes, but good people learn from them. Isabella unwraps the gift. It's not an expensive toy, but a simple set of colored paper and child-safe scissors. I thought maybe you could teach me how to make paper dolls, Isabella says. I never learned how to make things with my hands. I only learned how to buy things. Sophie's eyes light up. Really? You want to learn? For the next hour, they sit on the mall bench, Sophie patiently showing Isabella how to fold paper, how to cut carefully, how to draw faces with crayons. David watches quietly, amazed at how his daughter's simple kindness is teaching a billionaire CEO lessons no business school ever could. Look, Sophie holds up Isabella's first paper doll. It's not perfect, but it's made with love. That's what makes it special. Isabella stares at the crooked little figure and suddenly understands what David meant about real wealth. Sophie, she says softly, would you like to help me with a project? What kind of project? Sophie asks. I want to start a foundation to help children like you, and I think you'd be the perfect person to help me understand what kids really need. David intervenes gently. Sophie, that's very kind of Ms. Cross, but please, Isabella interrupts. Not as a business arrangement, as friends. I want to learn how to see the world the way Sophie sees it. Where helping others is more important than helping yourself. Sophie looks at her paper doll creation. Daddy always says the best gifts are the ones that make other people smile. She hands the paper doll to Isabella. This is for you, so you remember that being rich means having friends. Isabella accepts the simple gift with trembling hands, knowing she's holding something more valuable than any stock portfolio or real estate investment. As they prepare to leave, David extends his hand to Isabella. Thank you for apologizing. It takes courage to admit when we're wrong. Isabella shakes his hand. Thank you for showing me what courage really looks like. Living with kindness, even when others don't understand. Walking away together, Sophie skips between them. Daddy, I think we have a new friend. David smiles. I think you're right, sweetheart. Behind them, Isabella follows, no longer chasing wealth or status, but learning something infinitely more valuable, that the richest life is one spent lifting others up. The paper doll in her pocket reminds her that sometimes the smallest gestures create the biggest changes, and that true success isn't measured in dollars, but in the smiles you help create.